Vegeta stands as one of Dragon Ball's most iconic characters, second to only Goku. A bit ironic, given his antagonistic start and relentless ambition to surpass his rival. Vegeta's appeal to fans runs deep, even though Toriyama has been famously tough on the character, often casting him in challenging or underdog roles. But that underdog status is precisely why fans relate to him. His drive and tenacity resonate, especially given his constant struggle to overcome his limitations. Not only do we root for Vegeta as a hero, but we also appreciate his darker side. Majin Vegeta is often remembered as one of the most compelling moments in the entire series. Despite the morally questionable actions he takes in his forms, fans understand his frustration, his need to reclaim his pride, and the complexity of his ambition. After all, Vegeta as himself says, a Saiyan always keeps his pride, and like a Saiyan, Dragon Ball always keeps evil Vegeta. Interestingly, every series iteration has seen Vegeta take on a role of a villain, even temporarily. Dragon Ball Daima might follow this trend too, but let's first look back at other instances of Vegeta's evil side in the past series. Starting with the original Dragon Ball. Vegeta wasn't even a part of the story when it first began, but his history as a ruthless, planet-conquering prince was established as canon, and his actions as a younger warrior fueled this legacy. In Dragon Ball's initial arc, Goku arrives on Earth as an infant after being launched from the Saiyan homeworld, planet Vegeta. But while Goku was growing up with love and training, Vegeta was on the other side of the galaxy, conquering planets and waging war. Though he was only a child, Vegeta's life of forced servitude to Frieza meant he had no choice in his actions. In a later scene with Frieza, Vegeta gives a heartfelt speech about being denied any agency over his life, but that fact remains that during this time he was wreaking havoc on other worlds. Even during flashbacks, we see that while Goku was fighting Piccolo in the Tenkaichi Budokai, Vegeta was out there ruthlessly destroying entire civilizations, making it clear that Vegeta was originally depicted as 100% evil. So yeah, even in the series he wasn't in, he was evil Vegeta. In Dragon Ball Z, Vegeta's character arc becomes more intricate, and there's a lot of debate over when exactly he starts to evolve from villain to anti-hero. To really understand this transformation, we need to look at his journey in Z, arc by arc. Starting with the Saiyan Saga, Vegeta is arguably at his most ruthless, driven by ambition and desire to overthrow Frieza. Years of brutal servitude under Frieza forced him into unspeakable acts, but his natural Saiyan thirst for battle and destruction also added to his menace. Learning about the Dragon Balls, he seizes on the idea of using them to gain ultimate power, leading him to Earth. When he encounters Gohan, a half-Saiyan child, he barely hesitates before attempting to kill him, seeing him as nothing more than a potential threat or pawn. Vegeta's view of other Saiyans and his ruthlessness becomes even more clear in his treatment of Nappa. Nappa, who loyally served under Vegeta for years, as shown in Bardock, father of Goku, is killed without hesitation when Vegeta decides he's no longer useful. The fact that Vegeta would kill his own loyal comrade despite claiming to take pride in his Saiyan heritage says a lot about his character at this point. Interestingly, he even invites Goku to join him, suggesting that his loyalty depends only on what he perceives as valuable. By killing Nappa, he showed that those around him are disposable if they no longer serve a purpose, even though they could have saved him with the healing chamber, as these existed on their ships. This ruthless calculation and disregard for others solidified Vegeta as truly evil during the Saiyan Saga. When examining Vegeta's role in the Frieza Saga, it's clear that this arc introduces complex questions about his character, and for some fans, this is where the controversy around Vegeta's morality begins. It's often rumored that Dragon Ball Z was initially intended to conclude after the Frieza Saga, with Goku seemingly sacrificing his life to defeat Frieza, and the destruction of Namek marking a dramatic end. While this ending is more a rumor than confirmed canon, it's true that Akira Toriyama originally intended to write Vegeta out of the series after his death by Frieza's hands. However, Vegeta became so popular that Toriyama decided to bring him back for future story arcs. Throughout the Namek Saga, Vegeta ruthlessly pursued the Dragon Balls, aiming to achieve immortality so he could finally defeat Frieza, acknowledging that he could never overpower him in a straightforward battle. Just as he nears his goals, the Grand Elder of Namek passes away, causing the Dragon Balls to turn to stone, shattering Vegeta's hopes. When he is ultimately defeated by Frieza, Vegeta's composure breaks, and for the first time he sheds tears, revealing the trauma of a life lived under Frieza's tyranny. Forced to kill or be killed, Vegeta had no choice but to become the ruthless warrior we see, stripped of control over his own destiny. This vulnerable moment leads some fans to question that Vegeta's intentions on Namek were purely evil, as he left Gohan and Krillin alive several times, even when he could have easily eliminated them. He also helped them by revealing the location of the healing chambers on Frieza's ship, allowing them to recover Goku in time for the fight. But while Vegeta's actions may seem ambiguous to some, others see them as calculated rather than kind-hearted. Despite sparing Gohan and Krillin, he showed no hesitation in slaughtering innocent Namekians who stood in his way. The only reason for letting Gohan and Krillin live was pragmatic. They were useful to him. With their help, he could buy time until Goku arrived, or possibly gain support against the Ginyu Force and Frieza. His decision to let Goku recover was less of an act of compassion and more about his Saiyan pride. Vegeta wanted a fair fight and a proper challenge. Thus, any notion that Vegeta was good at this point overlooks the cold brutality he displayed during his time on Namek. As far as intention goes, still 100% evil in this arc. The Android Saga represents the first time Vegeta's character begins to show signs of change. though at the beginning he remains largely driven by selfishness. Even in the future timeline where Vegeta ultimately dies at the hands of the androids, his motives lean more towards survival than protection of others. If that Vegeta had a place in the afterlife, it will most certainly be hell. When we see Vegeta in the present timeline, his selfishness is still evident. When Dr. Gero threatens Bulma and young Trunks' life, Vegeta doesn't intervene to protect them, brushing it off by saying he doesn't care about sentimental attachments. Later in the Buu Saga, it's confirmed that Vegeta at this point in the timeline would indeed go to hell, reinforcing the idea that his priorities have yet to change. However, a deeper shift in Vegeta's character emerges subtly during his time in the hyperbolic time chamber with future Trunks. Over their time together, they develop a bond, though this is only hinted at initially. Their relationship becomes more evident during Vegeta's confrontation with Semi-Perfect Cell. Vegeta is well aware of Trunks' power, including his use of the bulky Grade 3 transformation. This familiarity hints at the sparring sessions they had in the chamber and shows Vegeta's unspoken understanding of his son's abilities. By this point in the story, Vegeta's demeanor may not appear vastly different on the surface, but a critical shift occurs when Cell kills future Trunks. Witnessing his son's death, Vegeta's response reveals a depth of emotion we haven't seen from him before. His reaction, an immediate furious assault on Cell, isn't just the expression of anger. It is a raw display of grief and loss that transcends his usual pride-driven motives. This scene is significant as it provides the first glimpse of Vegeta feeling and acting on genuine concern for another person who isn't himself or his rival Goku. Throughout the series up to this point, Vegeta's choices have solely been driven by his relentless pursuit of power, his desire to surpass Goku, and his loyalty only to his own ambitions. Yet here we see something unexpected. He is no longer just a detached, power-obsessed Saiyan prince. He's a father who has perhaps reluctantly come to care deeply for his son. The raw anger that drives him into battle against Cell after Trunks' death, despite the inevitable futility of the fight, highlights a new level of complexity to Vegeta's character. No longer fueled purely by the need to prove himself or by the single-minded pride of a warrior. He's instead driven by genuine loss and familial attachment, something that feels unprecedented for Vegeta. This moment symbolizes a turning point for him. While he fails to stop Cell, Vegeta's furious assault after Trunks' death marks the first time his gradual transition from a selfish anti-hero to a multi-dimensional character with layers of vulnerability and humanity. He is beginning to show the capacity to care for others beyond his immediate interests or power gains. Although this moment doesn't erase his darker qualities or transform him into a hero, it undeniably shifts from the wholly self-centered fighter we knew before. In this rare instance, Vegeta steps out of the shadow of pure interest and vengeance, revealing a man who, still far from a classic hero archetype, has started a journey towards becoming someone far more nuanced and relatable. Now we reach the final saga of Dragon Ball Z, the Buu Saga. A significant amount of time has passed since the events of the Cell Saga, 7 years to be exact, and Vegeta has shown noticeable change. He is no longer the ruthless warrior we once knew, having grown into more of a family man who shows care and responsibility beyond just himself. This evolution is marked by the fact that after these 7 years, Vegeta's circle of concern has expanded to include not only Goku and his son, but now also Bulma, his wife. It's clear he has developed a strong attachment to his family, something unthinkable for him earlier in the series. However, much of the progress is turned on its head when Vegeta willingly submits to Babidi's dark magic, embracing the transformation into Majin Vegeta. This transformation brings out a side of him that fans might argue is the coolest and most intense version of Vegeta we've ever seen, at least visually and in terms of raw presence. Once in this Majin state, Vegeta's focus narrows entirely onto Goku, his rival, and one of the only people he truly acknowledges as an equal. From this point on, all his actions are driven by his desire to confront Goku in battle, seeking the thrill of combat in its most primal form. Goku, however, sees beyond Vegeta's hardened exterior and doubts his friend has truly reverted to being pure evil, and Goku is in many ways correct. Despite Vegeta's apparent reversion to the dark side, he doesn't fully regress to the cold-hearted warrior he was during the Saiyan or even the Frieza saga. While he may not show remorse, his actions are now layered. Vegeta's ruthlessness is still evident when he ruthlessly destroys a portion of the World Tournament Stadium, resulting in the death of numerous innocent people, an act reminiscent of his Android Saga self when he showed no hesitation in taking lives for the sake of a good fight, mainly in his battle against Android 18. On the highway, many cars were destroyed and lives were lost. But unlike in his earlier days, this version of Majin Vegeta isn't driven by sheer malice or a lack of empathy. There is still part of him that harbors care for others, and this becomes evident in his eventual sacrifice to protect his loved ones. Vegeta's final act in the Majin Buu saga, where he willingly sacrifices his life to try to save the world, marks a profound and meaningful turning point for his character. This moment signifies his full crossover from anti-hero to true hero. Nonetheless, it sparks the transformation we've seen in him going forward, a shift that feels truly earned. By the end of the Buu saga, he's no longer viewed as one of the villains of the series. Even Shenron, who acknowledges his goodness, treats him differently, bringing him back to life as he's not one of the really bad guys. This redemption feels especially satisfying and well-deserved, one of the most convincing redemptions seen in the Dragon Ball universe, or even in fiction as a whole. At this point, Vegeta's transition to hero status seems complete, and he appears unlikely to return to his old ways. Despite this, the trope of evil Vegeta doesn't end here. The popularity of his Majin Vegeta persona and the fan response to the darker side of Vegeta were so impactful that similar versions of evil Vegeta appeared throughout Dragon Ball continuations. This theme resurfaces prominently in Dragon Ball GT with the arrival of Baby. Baby, a parasitic entity from the Tuffle race, goes through numerous transformations, ultimately taking on Vegeta's body as his host. Initially, Baby is a small, semi-organic creature with a gray shell, red eyes, and a long antenna that gives him an eerie look. Over time, as he maneuvers, he transforms into an armored human-like figure with blue-green body armor, red and yellow wristbands, and shoulder pads. His eyes change from red to blue, symbolizing his transformation. The most notable visual difference, however, is his hair, which turns white instead of the usual black or gold, marking Baby's influence over Vegeta's appearance. This fusion of Baby and Vegeta brings forth another iteration of an evil Vegeta, but one driven by Baby's Tuffle vendetta. Although Vegeta himself is not the source of this evil, the transformation into Baby Vegeta certainly portrays him in a darker light, presenting a twisted reflection of evil Vegeta. This theme continues in Dragon Ball Super, where a similar concept is introduced with duplicate Vegeta. This occurs after Grill and his henchmen are cloned by a mysterious weapon known as Kamasen, which absorbs Vegeta and replicates his power and form. Duplicate Vegeta, as a clone of the Saiyan Prince, closely mirrors the original Vegeta's personality traits, particularly those from before his moral evolution. He relishes looking down upon weaker opponents and shows sadistic satisfaction in defeating them. Though an artificial entity, Duplicate Vegeta fully believes himself to be the real Vegeta and dismisses the true Vegeta as merely a shadow of his former self. He inherits Vegeta's competitive nature and his fierce rivalry with Goku, resisting Kamasen's usual control mechanisms because of the strength of Vegeta's own will, similar to like Majin Vegeta in the Buu Saga. This independence surfaces during his encounter with Goku, where instead of focusing on the mission of absorbing Goku's energy, Duplicate Vegeta insists on battling Goku directly, mirroring the real Vegeta's desire for self-earned power. Despite Duplicate Vegeta's allegiance to his creators, he retains some of Vegeta's core emotions. This is evident when he hesitates at the command to absorb Trunks, as if recognizing to some extent the familial bond that Vegeta shares with his son. In Dragon Ball Super, Duplicate Vegeta essentially embodies the latest evil Vegeta theme, underscoring a reoccurring motive where some iteration of a dark or antagonistic Vegeta appears in each series. With the new series in Dragon Ball Daima, I believe this trend will continue, but I'd be interested to know what you guys think in the comment section below. Do you think this evil Vegeta theory will continue, and we'll see Vegeta become evil in Dragon Ball Daima, even if it's for a brief moment, or will the trend end here? Be sure to let me know. And until next time, Majin Birds.